World building for Dungeons & Dragons is a tricky business because an adventuring party is like the giant boulder from Indiana Jones, but 10 times bigger with infinite momentum driven by booties, all while zigzagging around like it's Microsoft's 3D pinball Space Cadet. I'm Jack from Stoneworks World Building. I hope you enjoy this video, like and subscribe and let me hear your thoughts. And if you want more world building action, there's a Discord link down there to chat with like-minded people and get great back massages. You could just railroad your players on one predetermined path to make the world building easy. You'd know exactly what parts of the map to focus on, how the world building would factor into plot points, and how to make dynamic characters that bounce off one another in meaningful and satisfying ways. But this is D&D. I don't want to see none of that shit. No trains, no John Henrys. Where world building in a book can be deep like a fishing line, for D&D, you gotta cast it wide like a net. Let me explain. There are two things that'll make your world building better for D&D. It's in how you make your map, and how you write and improv new things into it. Look up D&D map in Google Images. I guarantee you, that most of them are the environment, plus settlements, plus the place names. Maybe it has roads. But everything looks consistent with each other. The colors tell you exactly what biome is what. The villages are little dots and the cities are dots with circles around them, and a star for the capital. So what's my issue with this since I'm filled to the spleen with sarcasm? The way I see it, these maps love realism too much. The real-life maps that we're used to strictly show only a few things. It'll be countries, cities, spatial statistics, resources, whatever. For D&D and most imaginary worlds, we gotta show the whole context of the world in one map. So the environment, cities, and countries do a pretty solid job of conveying what to expect. But if I were visiting your fantasy land on vacation, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do. I'd wander to the closest town in my socks and sandals and hope there are cool things to do around here. Paint my picture with this statue like I'm holding it up, haha. Your players are ultimately tourists in your world. I propose making maps that, instead of featuring cities as their main marker of where to go, feature all sorts of different landmarks. I've seen people dipping their toes into this. It's usually forts and castles and maybe a squid in the ocean. But I'm talking about placing a wide array of things that could exist in your world that would be interesting for the players to explore. Yes, place your environment, add some towns and cities. There's a coal mine over there, there's a forest of obsidian statues over here, out in the jungle there's a totem called the Forsaken Pole, that's my dick. Over there is the literal entrance to the underworld, and it's right next to Kyle's house. He went over to this ancient burial site and he found that a dragon lives there, so now it's labeled on the map as Lame Dirt Burial Site because he befriended the dragon and doesn't want anyone to bother it? What? Uncle Iroh? Do you see what I'm getting at now? And this doesn't mean you have to initially mark down every coal mine or random temple that's in your world. In fact, please don't. Because having an incomplete and sort of inconsistent map gives you breathing room to go, they're going the wrong way, random orc sacrificial chamber. Also, maps give you a fun way to incite mystery, because your players don't need to know what something is, even if it's on the map. With the promise that it's on the map so it's important or interesting, or even an objective that points to it, the place has to be worth checking out. Having a cool name helps for it too, as long as you're not trying too hard with it, i.e. cool noun plus cool adjective. A forest called the Black Blades, for example. Okay, I would still use that, but that's just because I'm a campy motherfucker. But more commonly, I'd do something like the Horn of Wheels, the Red Talls, or the Salties. All of these imply one or two of the place's attributes, but say nothing of what they actually are. But should you as the DM know what they are before the players get there? If you want to, you may have to pause the game and shuffle through your notes when they get to one of these places. If you want to leave it open-ended, you can, but you may have to improv what the whole place is on the spot. More on that later. This is some tricky business because leaving out information adds anxiety and makes players feel less prepared. And you may have to do some gymnastics to keep them in the dark of what these weirdly named places are, especially if it's close by. If an NPC is telling the party that there's an ancient artifact hidden deep in the caverns of the Salties, how the fuck do they know about that without knowing what the Salties even are? Maybe they could have read it in some journal and wholeheartedly believed it, but we should be convincing here. Sometimes you may just need to tell them outright one or two things about it, but you can leave the rest open. Listen, brave heroes, a lone goblin of the necromancer Schlurpnob turned on him, and he told us that one of his lairs is in the middle of the Red Talls, just past the Black Rock. What are the red talls? I don't know. I pressed him for information, but he wouldn't say any more. Seems legit. And turns out the red talls are actually giant red fungus stalks that if you touch them, you stick to them, and you'll slowly be pulled in and absorbed by them. Have fun! I've always found that designing the map as if it belonged to a previous adventurer is very helpful. It allows you to believably place all the landmarks, keep some things out of context, and you can add fun little things that don't appear on official-looking maps. Having a little village called Stone Post is quaint. Having a little village called Stone Post, which is overlaid in red pen scribbled, "No, no, no, no!" is fun. Opening questions for your players using your map, the most foundational part of a D&D world, is an easy way to get them engaged. A map takes no explanations to read it, but it can give as many or a few explanations as you want it to. If the players can imagine an exciting answer for these questions, they'll be more into it. Just please have a payoff for these expectations. Adding these landmarks on your map will require some decent writing. I think writing for D&D needs to be a series of individual premises that the players can interact with. The plot for D&D is how these premises interact with each other, and the story of D&D is what the players do inside of this plot web. The premises are pretty basic. They are anything that's doing something without the player's intervention. A group of students are revolting in the city. There's a goblin going around collecting change so he can get his pet slime a sex change operation. Somebody left a wagon in the middle of the market and it exploded during the midday rush. An actor does something interesting. Whatever reason they have can be discovered later as long as it can make sense at face value.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing!
The goblin must love his transgender slime very much. The premises should be shown through interactions with people, groups, the environment, and even combat. This means conversations, the players witnessing conflict, and the aftermath of something that already happened. That last one is very important. It makes it seem like the world is vibrant and alive on its own. I also like to have the encounter that displays the premise to be one-sided. The revolting students won't give you the king's side of the story, the king will. I say that this is what the plot is, the tension that the different premises create, and it's what you can write in preparation for a D&D campaign. Will the players help the revolting students? The king? You won't know beforehand. You basically want to world build what could be relevant to the next steps of escalating these tensions. And how do you do that? More premises. One of the NPCs mentioned that the city guard temporarily moved its weapons and armor to a warehouse while they're cleaning the barracks.
Get out of my way before I have you slapped in irons.
One of the students' brothers was locked up and tortured, and he said that the rats in the prison had this magical energy and runes carved into them. A wagon just blew up in the town market, and nobody's claiming responsibility for it. If you have 3 or 4 decent premises that could be relevant to one, or better yet, both sides of the conflict, there's a solid chance that the party will find at least one of them and progress the story. And as they do, maybe throw in more of them. Hopefully not all, though. Don't let too much action confuse your game. Take it one step at a time, have a small list of premises that could pop up in the next session, and have 1 or 2 premises that will probably become relevant further down the road. After the players join the students, take the guard stuff from the warehouse, find and release the Necro Druid from the prison, and get that slime its sex change, maybe they'll figure out that the king's top advisor is corrupt and looking to replace him. I quickly want to stress that something as big and plot relevant as assassinating the king probably shouldn't happen without the players having some role in it, unless you can figure it out so that it's satisfying, but I totally can't. Do better than me. And the story? Well, that's just the players' moves during the game session. So how do you as the DM deal with that? Improv. Now, don't get me wrong, running a session smoothly isn't all whose line is it anyway.
You have come seeking knowledge?
You've got to prepare to improv. That means have lists of names for NPCs to draw from, have an idea of the stores and shops in the city, and have a master list of stuff that's just interesting. Have enough things and enough variation in your list to just be able to pull something out of it in many different contexts. If you see something interesting or cool at all, think about how it could be applied to D&D and then add it to the list. Literally today, I was scrolling Reddit and I saw a video of a Chinese dude skipping stones so well they just glided over the surface of the water. Imagine if a castle had a big moat and the guards were doing that to fend the players off. The stones would pop up at the end and smack them in the face before they even figured out what was going on. As long as it can be made dangerous, fun, disturbing, funny, or interesting, jot it down. This will make coming up with interesting encounters a lot easier, and you will never bore your players as long as they keep moving through the world. Now, actually doing the improv? I'm sorry, but it's really just a skill that you have to hone. And I'm not great at it myself, but I've learned that you get better as you prioritize committing to new ideas over keeping your world 100% logical and consistent. Yeah, while improving, you might get called out for forgetting that this faction existed, or for having a creature act totally different and thereby frustrating the rule lawyers and experienced players, but I think the benefits outweigh those situations. And I have a little trick for improving characters and places. Take the idea you need at the moment, the peasant, the inn, the mountain, whatever, and take one surface level characteristic of it and make it strange. The peasant has brass claws for hands. The tables at the inn are all lined in a strange, wavy fur that when you touch it, it purrs and you get high. The mountain just got up and danced away. Mostly, it just involves taking the default noun and finding an adjective or verb that would apply to it in an unexpected way. But if you do this for every farmer and innkeeper they meet, it loses its punch pretty quickly. For every one peasant that has brass claws on his hands that they talk to, maybe 2 should be totally normal, and 1 should have a scar in his face and have a big hat. That ratio sounds good to me, but play around with it obviously. My last tip is that even though this is a fantasy game, the content of it will be more impactful if it resonates with your players in real life. Say my players were walking through some crypt and I wanted to introduce them to the big baddie Lich King with a display of grossness when they open up the sarcophagus. My friends and I are from a dense woodland swamp area, so I'd probably make a shit ton of ticks and mosquitoes jump out because we actually deal with that, and the grossness of it is ingrained in us. So if you live in New York City, probably don't make the gross thing some creature you never actually interact with. Maybe do rats or pigeons or homeless people. My elitism is showing. It's easy to forget that we, the actual people playing D&D, have not the slightest clue of what it was like to live back then in the time that we're trying to emulate. In a real Bronze Age D&D, motherfuckers would put you in the ground and throw rocks at you for saying, "God damn it, Leviticus 24:16. And honestly, that's just a TPK waiting to happen.
Mega kill.
But hey, it was logical to enough people at one time that they wrote it down in a flipping law book. I think the content of D&D is better when it's easily digestible to the players, but perhaps wrapped in a fantasy coding. People nowadays well understand the dread, fear, and context around 2 nations pointing nuclear missiles at each other, so why not let that become 2 kobold kingdoms threatening each other with magic bombs? It's super digestible and you already know what it looks like. When they walk up to a kingdom, let them look out onto the city, see kobold Kim Jong-un botch a bomb test and hit the giant statue of kobold communism. Kim Jong-un then turns around and awards everyone in the front 2 rows of his demonstration a brand new gold medal, and everyone stands up and they do claps and claps and claps for Cum Joop Noop as he smiles and waves. I don't know, maybe the corporate media owns my soul.
I got hairy legs.
I just think that adjusting the content of your world to reflect a context that we're more familiar with makes connecting with the world easier, and people's fantasy itch can be scratched by how it's presented. It's not super hard to substitute current events with fantasy versions. Look, underlying plot conflict, ISIS, fantasy skin, dwarf miners union. Now that's a labor strike.